back to my channel. I hope you had a wonderful week with your students. This week was insanely busy for me. On Monday, we actually had a half day because we had some snowfall. I was actually planning two, not one, but two unit menus for my honors and my college prep classes. And then, oh, of course, I was observed this week. So it was a wild week, a good week though. I did have a really great observation. The menus went incredibly well. So overall, great week. I accomplished a lot of things and I think the kids are doing great. Both classes, my college prep and my honors classes, are working on covalent bonding. And so as I showed you, you can see the menus look very similar. But for those of you that are implementing menus in your class, you may have questions about like, how do I take a unit menu and modify it for an honors class or modify it for a college prep class. And so I thought I would talk a little bit about how I was doing that. Now, I've been spoiled. The last 5 years that I worked here, I've only had 2 years so far where I had 2 preps. So for those of you that have more than 2 preps, you have so many accolades from me because it is so difficult to have more than 1 prep. I really like having the 1 prep because I can focus a lot of my energy into kind of getting things the way I want them, but I've gotten really skilled at making menus and I feel a lot more confident in what I'm doing now, so I can still adjust and I'll be fine. But it does take a lot more work and you do have to keep things straight. It's hard work, but it's not impossible work. So let me tell you some things that work for me. So the first thing that you want to do whenever you're planning a menu is, usually my rule of thumb is, if it takes a CP class 2 periods, more than likely it's going to take an honors class 1 to 1.5 periods. Usually the honors class has a shorter amount of time to complete similar tasks to the CP classes. The second thing that I do with the honors students is, because they're a little bit more independent, they're independent learners and thinkers, and they tend to want to, get through the content and get through it as accurately as possible. I'm able to offer them a lot more choice as a result, because I don't really have to spend as much time with them going through like, this is how you do this particular activity and this is how you do this activity. The honors kids, I find, are able to be a little bit more self-sufficient, more independent, so I'm able to kind of walk around and just answer quick questions and get them going. Whereas with the CP classes, I kind of feel like if I offer too many choices, they feel overwhelmed, and I want to make sure that whatever they're working on, that they feel that they can tackle the problem and they can be a little bit more enabled to understand the content that's going on. And I think with so many choices, I'm really not able to get around to everybody, and it kind of makes it a little bit more difficult for me to answer questions. The third thing that really helps, at least with the CP classes, is in every menu I try to offer some sort of enrichment section. So this one is the honors enrichment section. So this enrichment section goes over some more resonance and hybridization. And then in the CP one, they actually have more choices. So with the CP, I find that it's a lot easier for me to come up with different enrichment things, because the enrichment often comes from the honors level unit menu. So for example, in the CP class, we don't talk about resonance at all. So now in the enrichment, they have an option to read about what resonance is. They have an option to do a card sort to learn about all the different expanded octet shapes. Or alternatively, they can build different isomers. So the CP class, they can do a lot of the things that's on the honors menu, because with the honors, one of the required things are those expanded octets and those different shapes. And so in here, there's a lab here using the MollyMod kits to basically create these shapes, and then give them an opportunity to build some isomers of butane. So that tends to really make it a lot easier for me to come up with enrichment activities for the CP classes as a result. I also find with the honors students, they need to cover a little bit more information. So if that's you, it's hard to come up with different activities that teach everything. So for example, none of the resources that I have really taught bond length or bond strength. So today what I did is I had the students complete a do now in class that talked about bond length and bond strength, and they looked at the single, double, and triple bonds with ethene, ethyne, and ethane. And so they were able to look at the different bond energies and look at the different lengths of each bond and talk about sigma bonds versus pi bonds. And so that's kind of one way I kind of just sneak in some more information, like if I'm not able to come up with some activities that go along with it. Another thing is too, like I found it difficult to come up with something to talk about expanded octets. So the other day, about 2 days ago, we did an expanded octets do now, where I just modeled for them, you know, what an expanded octet is and, you know, how it comes from, what's the theory behind it. And then I did some Lewis structures on the board. A do now like that really doesn't take more than 10 minutes, and so it doesn't take all that time away from actually completing the menu in class. So I hope this video gave you some insight as to how I spend my time planning for both the honors and the CP different unit menus. If there's anything that you're using in your class to kind of help differentiate between the two levels, I'd love to know about it. So feel free to leave a comment below. Either way, I hope you have an amazing weekend, and I hope to check in with you next week.